Just a sec.
Hi friends, good afternoon and I welcome everybody to the 8th edition of CILF, Schooling International Literacy Festival 2020, organized by the CILF School Nest on with Vishwakarma Publications. I would like to thank the organizers for creating this beautiful online portal, giving the opportunity to all the literary like-minded people to connect globally with one another and make the most in the field of literacy and take home the varied of different panel discussions on the books that are going to be shared around and to hear more on the featured authors and renowned personalities. On our today's interesting topic, which is VP Women Power, I would like to share some information about Vishwakarma Publications. Since its establishment, which is in the year around 2013, Vishwakarma Publications has diligently and lovingly, I would say, under its envelope, in its umbrella, taken hundreds of authors and given a beautiful, curated a beautiful platform for every budding author also who has had that desire in him or her to share with the world their inspirations that write their writing and to put it out, print it out, distribute, market it all across on every possible platform. And it's not just that. More than 100 women authors are under the umbrella of Vishwakarma Publications. So I'd like to thank Vishwakarma Publications for diligently and dedicatedly at it and giving us this multiple opportunities. I would like to welcome all the renowned authors of Vishwakarma Publications. We're happy to be in the office company of Dharmishra Sharma, Ritu Lalit, Rupangi Sharma, and Swati Sharma. Allow me to introduce Sharmishra Sharma. She has been an IT professional, worked with companies like TCS, Infosys, Satyam, and Microsoft, a Calcutta-born girl with an MTech degree from the University of Reading. Sarmishta chose to dedicatedly put her best creative juices flow out in terms of her fiction stories and mystery writing, which she has been featured for in New magazine as well as in Women's Era magazine. Sarmishta's latest book, Murder in Chowdhury Palace, is not just an interesting murder mystery, but what it highlights is the nature of the woman centric and the strong protagonist, powerful way of projecting a woman. Sarvishta, happy to have you on our panel discussion. I welcome
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce and welcome Rupangi Sharma, an author, editor, and an entrepreneur. A postgraduate in media studies, Rupangi chose not to go into a professional field of media studies but follow her inner calling and creativity in education and writing. Rupangi's debut novel, Lights of My Own, is an interesting read which beautifully carves the story of gender biased test selection. We have lots to talk about this, Rupangi. Rupangi has edited India Alive with Malvika Singh and Harsh Sethi, a compelling volume featuring discussions among South Asia's most influential thinkers like Ramchandra Guha and Shyam Benegal. Her non-fiction contribution in the best-selling Chicken Soup for the Soul series has been doing extremely well, and a collection of poems was recently launched by late Shri Sheila Dikshit ji, the Delhi Chief Minister. Rupangi, I would like to welcome you on the show.
Thank you so much, Preeti. Really excited to be here.
Ritu Lalit is a graduate with a gold medal in English literature from Guwahati and a postgraduate in English literature from Delhi University. Ritu's short stories have been featured in NCERT curriculum and also she has been featured in anthologies. She is an author of five fiction books and one non-fiction book titled Son to Stranger, which is her latest release. Ritu, I welcome you on the show.
Hi, glad to be here.
She is an author, editor, content developer, award winner of short stories, a blogger, and an aspiring journalist. Prachi has done her master's in pharmacy from Manipal University and works in the health communications. Another renowned author on our panel, an author who's written six books and short stories, as well as a book that he published in and accepted in the female anthology column or section, and they have appeared in the online literary magazines and various online portals. Presently, Prachi is working on a collection of the horror stories and crime series which is set in Bollywood. Prachi, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
So before we further get rolling on, yes, our topic is women power. Sarmishta, could you share an insight of the latest book which we just spoke about, Murder in Chaudhary Palace, which is a female centric story? What was the inspiration that you got for this? Giving the women as the most empowering person.
Yeah, actually, I had been. I love traveling, and had been to Rajbari. You know the meaning of a Rajbari, right? In Bengali, we call it Rajbari, or a palace. It was not exactly a big king or something like that, but it is a small zamindar family. But they were at one point of time in the Mughal emperor's time. They were pretty powerful and rich. So they had a palatial mansion, which of course now in after so many generations down the line, they are not so well off anymore. So what they are doing is they said they converted it into a heritage hotel kind of stuff. So I had gone there, and the moment I went in there, the atmosphere was so beautiful that I could feel that as if I'm stepping back in time. And when I did that, when I stepped back in time, it was like I could see the Zamindar families, consecutive families, how they used to behave, and and inspiration was like Shei Shamai by Sunil Gangopadhyay, those days for which he won an academy. So it was like all the live characters. That was also set in the 18th century kind of stuff, in the times of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar and Michael Madhusudan Datta and all those people, Rabindranath's grandfather, Dwarkanath Tagore. So it was like all the characters were coming right in front of me when I was inside that house. And from there, I got the inspiration to write Murder in the. And then you get that spooky feeling also because, in today's days and age, you're living in a small apartment and then you see these huge house with huge rooms and you get kind of spooked also. So then you get the feeling, oh, okay, what if there was a curse here in this family, because the zamindars, we know that they were also had a lot of atrocities. They committed a lot of atrocities. So what if some restless spirit is moving around in these rooms? So from there, I got the inspiration to write Murder in the Chaudhary Palace. But I don't believe in ghosts, and so obviously, I. But it was a nice setting for which one as an author I can imagine that the villain of the piece will go and dress up as a ghost and try to scare the victim. So basically from there itself, so all those thoughts, jumbled up thoughts, just came in my mind at that particular instant. And then gradually I stayed there for 2 3 days, so it kind of built up. But then I came back to my own humble home, and then but in my mind I was, from there I the entire story germinated.
And what is the inspiration to have Durga as the lead and the protagonist being a woman? Is it a woman to woman connect, or you wanted to communicate a message across through that concept?
Not really, but I actually, I don't know. I just don't know why. I mean, the characters just formed in my own mind, and I can't say, but like what probably the thought that process that came in my mind is say, say some 10, 20 years down the line, before this age, if somebody wanted to grow rich quick, just marry the head of the family, and you become rich. So that, and Durga is a person who is an orphan and who was born in a rich family, but her all the parents, the amount, the fortune that was left to her by her parents were taken away by somebody. So she wanted to become rich at any cost. So that's how that kind of Durga got placed inside that Rajbari, and that is how the entire story came into place. I am, in general, I like to write woman-centric because I feel more power should be there with the woman, and there should be more focus. And maybe that's how that. Maybe that was in the back of my mind. I am a feminist, if though I don't. Not a very hardcore feminist, but definitely, yeah, I myself admire people, a woman who can, a strong woman basically, who can take adversities in their stride and then go ahead and then make their own, write their own destiny, basically. So
That
that's
is
how
that is
the, yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. This is where we are. It is not just talking about empowering, but we want to get things projected and communicated. Correct me if I'm wrong, in the right manner, giving the correct respect, recognition, and reputation, be it
Yes,
whatever cost it is. And it's not just India, but worldwide, women have been deprived about lots of things. I mean, I was reading the first women author was back in the Mesopotamian age, Edunama, and she was a priestess, she was an author, and there was so much of writing she'd done. It brings me to Rupangi's latest book, which is talking about sex guidance, biased sex experiences, I guess, that, or you must have seen around, which gave you the inspiration to create a story on a woman. Talk to us something about the book, and please hold your book up so that we can show the book to every person who is attending the show and they're inspired. They can always pick a copy and read. Over to you, Rupangi. You're muted, Rupangi. You need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Okay. This is my book, A Life of My Own. Just holding it up. And it's about gender biased sex selection. And like you said, Preeti, it did come from a personal space in that, my mother told me about the story of my birth. And that's where it all started. So it's this one particular thing that she told me about. And she said that, I was really keen to have a daughter. But when I gave birth to you, the nurses and the hospital staff were really, really shocked at how excited I was or how happy I was, because it was not something that was common to see. It was more common to see reactions of remorse and disappointment and heartache at the birth of a girl child. And I think at the time I was really young and obviously completely unaware about these kinds of things. And I said, why would anybody be disappointed by the birth of a daughter, right? Because it really hit home. So I thought about it a lot, and in my teens, I started reading about gender rights movements across the world and things like that, and realized that if you think about the odds, this could have happened to any one of us. This could have been, you or me, as an unborn girl child, or even as a mother to be. I think this is it's just atrocious that things like this exist still today in the modern world. We call it modern. And I started writing this book when I was 18, and I tried to find a book like mine. I really looked and searched And there was nothing which portrayed women, like Sharmishta said, portrayed strong women who were taking control of their own destiny and really getting out of situations like these, which are hard, which are tough, which are a struggle that you endure. But very few books actually portray women as survivors and just people taking fate in their own hands and writing their destiny. So I think it really came from a space of wanting to see more books like this as well, and it made me determined to write my book. And I also got to thinking that we think of the word family and we associate it with security and safety. However, for so many millions of girls and women, this is not the case, and it's almost like a mass genocide that occurs in the everyday life of a family. And it really intrigued me, this idea that we think of family as a place of safety, as a place of security, and yet for so many women it isn't. And every time, Preeti, I've talked about this book, and this is in the urban educated context, right? Every time I speak about this book, I hear stories from women, whether they are mothers to be or mothers or even friends of mothers who have a girl child in their womb and are facing domestic violence because of this. And this is all, I was at a get together, for example, and someone said, my friend is going through this. However, she doesn't want to leave the marriage. So these are all situations which are occurring within our families, around us, to our friends, possibly. And the other thing is, when we talk about education, what is education? Education is when you really can question everything, when you can question your own social conditioning as well. And women are told so many things. I mean, you're supposed to always be happy, you're never supposed to feel any anger, and all of these things kind of play up when you're in a situation of violence, because you're thinking of saving face, you're thinking of honor, and then it really, from a place of anger for me, personal anger for me, that whose face are you saving? Whose honor are we saving? What about our own sense of self-respect? Where does that come into the picture? When does that come into the picture? So I think in all of these kinds of situations, and especially with gender bias sex selection as well, it really isn't the mother's fault. There are mechanisms of social and familial pressure which are at play, and you're so deeply conditioned to depend on everyone around you, not question, to obey, and always at the cost of your own sanity and happiness. And on top of that, this is something which is illegal. And so you definitely want to have a space to engage with women who are going through this. And that's where I felt that a book, especially through fiction, which was a very intimate space to have a conversation with the reader, is really the perfect medium to connect with readers. And hopefully, the idea is that, it reaches into the hands of girls and women who are already in such situations and inspires them to break the silence and get out.
Lovely. That is lovely thoughts. And so you mentioned you started writing when you were 18 years old. So
Yes.
what took you so long? Was it the research? Was it the wait to come in contact with the publishers? Or there was each time you wrote something, you always wanted to mull over it and think and add more value to it?
Absolutely. I think all of these, Preeti, one was, of course, I was really young. And it's not really about age per se, but also the amount of time that you worked spending, kind of with your craft, really understanding your own craft and finding your own voice. And given that it's my first book as well, I think that, it was a mix of things, and that I needed to find my voice, what worked for me in the story. It was all about also the characters, and more importantly, like you said, the research. Because to really delve deeply and understand this kind of a social issue takes a lot of time. I did read hundreds of case studies, and a lot of what I've written is based on actual stories and case studies which have happened to them.
So was it also a cathartic experience for you? Did you feel more empowered with the story that you heard from your mother at the time of your birth? And then you're progressively seeing how women are looked up to and treatments and on all the factors that you just mentioned. So did it bring a reformation once the manuscript was ready?
So cathartic for me, and I feel that, because I was speaking to women who are mothers and people who I knew, I was so shocked to see mothers confide in me and say, "Yeah, this happened to me, when I gave birth to a daughter. My mother-in-law tortured me mentally." I mean, torture is not always physical, right? It's emotional, it's mental. So a lot of it happens to our own people around us in our own social circle, which is really horrifying to see. Because where is that education really coming into play then? So it was cathartic in the sense that I wanted to definitely give a voice to all of these women who were suffering, and of course to question my own conditioning as well. So I think it was really interesting in that sense to kind of come from a space of deeply questioning all these biases that we have.
So I really love this. Spoken to Sharmishta and Rupangi on their books, which is talking, you all are women empowering yourself at the same time communicating out a message for the masses through beautifully carved and integrated stories. Ritu, I'm really curious to know about your latest launch, Sons to the Strangers, which is a non-fiction genre. What are the highlights of this book?
Yeah, so this is a book. All right, this actually came out of a very, very personal tragedy of mine. I mean, I'm a single parent. I brought up my sons alone.
Wow.
And when my older son grew up and got married, he changed. So there was an estrangement. I mean, from my side, it wasn't bitter, but we did get estranged and we are not talking to each other. So it was, as a single parent and a mother, you get very emotionally invested in your children. And Upar se in this country, or rather, I can say pan Asia, the ethos is, the thinking is that budhape ki lathi hai aulad.
Mm.
That they are your retirement plan, which actually, when you look at it from a child's point of view, that is his time to grow, to evolve, to live his own life. So there is a basic, mismatch of expectations between your children and you. And I had the option of getting depressed and all that, which I did for a while. I gave up my job. I sat down at home and I thought and I thought. And then one day, I don't know मेरे को क्या हुआ, I wrote a questionnaire and I sent it to my entire mailing list. If you know of anybody, or if you are in this situation, can I please talk to you? After writing it, I got very scared because, as a writer and all, you have a certain, you are introverts basically. So I got very scared. But surprisingly, I am still getting replies to that questionnaire. I'm still getting mobile number. I went to old age homes. I went to help age. I went to retirement colonies, which are actually swanky or Vridashrams only. And I talked to a lot of parents. And over the course of my talking to them, I realized that the pain I felt, it vanished. I went into, it healed me writing this book.
It always does. It always
It
does.
always does.
Yeah.
Ritu, maybe you could keep your phone aside.
Yeah,
So it should
I'm
be
just
an echo issue probably because of the telephone set, mobile phones being next to the screen.
yes, I've done that.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, I agree. It does, and it's very surprising. I mean, I have no bitterness towards my child. I know he's going through, it's his own path to lead, and I still love him a lot. But no, I will not. I mean, I do not have that desperate urge that no, why did he do this to me and all that, that anger is no longer there.
So was your book in a way cathartic for you? Did you empower yourself by
Oh, yes.
putting down into the book all that you had to say about your experiences? It's a personal memoir, I would say.
Actually, it is not personal in the sense that, yes, this happened and this is how I started on my journey. But it is stories from other people.
Okay.
It is stories from other people. There are parents who are going to say, Gee, the daughter in law is the evil alien. Snatched my son away. There are people like that. There are siblings who are struggling with, with this estrangement, the break of the family between parents and their older siblings.
Hmm.
And the very strange thing that every parent I met talks about their sons being estranged. Nobody
Okay.
talks about the daughters.
Yeah, I agree.
Huh? If the daughter talks to you once in 4 months on a phone, that is okay, but the son has to check in every day.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the kind of things that I discovered that I've talked about in the book.
Okay, okay. Coming to Prachi, who's also written loads of books and is on the roll with the new series that she's working on. Prachi, tell us about your latest release and where does the inspiration come from?
So this is my latest book, A Predator in Paradise,
Okay,
out
this is
with
Paradise,
Vishwakarma.
right? Yeah.
So,
Who role is that? Yeah.
so actually, I have been into researching. I am interested in the fields of criminology and gender violence. I have been interested in these fields from a long time, apart from, of course, my own research interests. So I've been reading up a lot on these two since I was in college, and I wrote this book around I think 5 or 6 years back.
Okay.
So at the time, I was heavily involved in finding out how criminal minds work and why there is gender-based violence. So at the time, I also was reading a lot of stories by people who have survived violence, and I realized one thing that given the influence of patriarchy, we do not talk about violence against men. Violence against women is, of course, highly prevalent. It's of endemic proportions, but we at least we talk about it. At least everybody knows that women face a lot of violence in their everyday lives. Violence of different types,
Hmm.
but we don't talk about violence against men. And toxic patriarchy says that if men face these, men must tamp down their emotions, and apart from that, if these things happen against men, if an older relative or an older woman or an older man assaults men, then they must stay quiet about it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the other disturbing fact is that if a man didn't talk about the fact that he was groped or he was assaulted by someone older, or someone in a position of trust, then people pat his back. They equate this assault to a consensual experience.
Hmm.
So based on all these facts, and also based on the fact that I was researching, especially I was heavily into researching serial killers at the time. I was reading a lot of books by this profiler called John Douglas. He's
Hmm.
considered the father of criminal profiling. Plus, there was another thought that in Bollywood, a lot of people come every year to make a fortune for themselves, but not everybody gets what they want, and there is a lot of this casting couch process going on in Bollywood. A lot of people take advantage of these aspiring actors. So I thought that we know that there is a lot of violence against women. Directors, producers, actors take advantage of young nubile females who come into the industry to become heroines. But what about the men? What about the tribulations that they face? And although I myself am a feminist and I'm very concerned about this, as a feminist, I also think that what is patriarchy doing to men? Is it stopping them from talking about the violence that is perpetuated on their bodies? Is toxic masculinity saying that you should not talk about sexual violence because it makes you a sissy? And so many of our prominent directors, actors, musicians have been sexually assaulted as children. So a combination of these three led me to write A Predator in Paradise. But that's not the only influence. It's also that I wanted to write a woman who, as Sharmishta and Rupangi have said, are strong female characters. And my cop, Nadia Lal, she is a very she's individualistic. She is very independent. She is like me. She is rebellious, and she does not give an inch when it comes to her values. And of course, she's a devoted cop. She has given her life to catching killers and understanding why people commit crimes. She herself is a criminologist by profession, something that I could not become. I had always had an aspiration that if not medicine or pharmacy, then I'll go into forensics, but that did not ultimately happen. So I keep that part of me alive through writing crime novels, apart from the fact that I'm interested in crime. So that is how this novel came about. My interest in serial killers, plus I wanted to depict sexual assault against men, plus I wanted to write a strong female character who mirrored certain aspects of what I thought were my personality. And I wanted to set it in Bollywood where we know a lot of sexual crimes happen. So this is how A Predator in Paradise came.
Mm-hmm. And I'm very intrigued to understand one part of this entire criminal mindset and the patriarchal system which you just mentioned about. Also, keeping in mind, yes, okay, women, everybody talks glorifies, as you say. Wouldn't say glorify, but there's a lot being done and a lot being spoken about the women empowerment, and people really miss out on the men angle of it. Um, which is the fundamental of the story that you have developed and worked on. But when you got into creating the story, the plot, doing your research, I personally believe that whatever we take, the task we take on hand to do, enriches us in its own style, in its own way. So when your targeted project, the book that you've written and the current book that you just shared about is written, how much powerful did you feel after that? How much did it help you?
Sorry, can you repeat? There's a lot of
So what
static.
I only hope that everybody's mobiles are away from the handset. I guess we are having some technical issues, so probably because of that. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is this entire series of books that you've written and the current one which you just shared about on the criminology aspect and everything is being done and spoken about for women. And you took a very unique topic to bring to light the experiences of a man, the thoughts of a man, and there's a whole lot of research that you've done. Now, of course, I understand that there is a connect with that topic, and there is a reason for which you put that story out. After having done that, from where you started till you completed your entire story, it's put in a capsule in a book format. How much powerful did you feel after that? It's like we taking a task. There is a goal, and at the end of it, we are happy. Oh wow! I started this task. I have completed it. Target achieved. Goal accomplished. But there is something more than that, which is very enriching and fulfilling. Because the topic is so close to your heart, as a woman, also, I would say, how much powerful or enriching was your experience?
So certainly I felt very powerful, especially at least emotionally and mentally. I felt that over the years, having read a lot on this and having put it in the form of a story, finally I can articulate what has been going on, how I feel about it, and of course, now that I know a lot about it, it can set a precedent for writing more stories like this that explore this different aspects. Of course, this was just a fraction of what actually goes on out there. So, of course, that set a precedent for writing more stories like this, which talk about other things, which delve deeper into this issue of gender violence, which has so many facets to it. And yeah, I feel empowered because I also discovered that I can write about violence without shying away from it, or I'm not afraid of what people think of me, that why does she write such graphic violence, or why is she, why does she talk about such uncomfortable topics. So I also overcame that initial awkwardness, that why do you write such violent stuff. My own sister told me that why is this novel so graphic. So I said that, see, that's the essential nature of gender violence, and I cannot water it down just because you are likely to throw up your hands. I cannot do that. So
So,
yeah, certainly I feel, especially emotionally and psychologically, this book did go a long way in empowering me and setting the scene for more books like this.
yeah, as I would like to add that you followed your dream and your passion. The topic that
And
you
you're
say,
being honest, which is
good,
very good.
which is good, and it is comment. I please share your views on this particular point. I feel as authors or as writers, once the ink starts flowing on a topic, it doesn't stop because there are so many ideas that come in the mind. We want to share it out, and in a way that is there is a reason uh, for what we are writing. There is a purpose. There is either a message to be communicated, or it's a cathartic experience, or it is something to overcome our own limitations, which at the end, I'm sure each one of you has overcome. What are your contributions, each one of your contributions on the thought, how powerful you feel literature is in se- communicating a message to the mass, and how powerful it is for people to take on from that and for your own benefit. The power of literature in empowering women, the power of literature in empowering the readers, the power of literature in empowering mankind in total. Ritu, what are your views on that?
I think any creativity, any field of creativity opens avenues to other creativities also. If you are a writer, many times you are not stuck to just writing. Then you start writing, maybe you start as a fiction writer, you start writing non-fiction, you start writing poetry. I mean, I decided to even go audio with it. As soon as the lockdown happened, I opened my own podcast. It's a podcast on manifestation. It's a podcast on positivity. Because once you are in the creative field, the creative field expands for you. So you get into a lot of avenues and it evolves you so much. I mean, I've met a lot of creative people just because I'm a creative person. I've met a lot of people who have had lots of good experiences to share.
True,
It
true,
just becomes your tribe increases literally, and your horizons increase. Any creativity.
true. Sarmishra, what are your views on this? The,
Uh, yeah, actually, I feel that once you start writing, if you see in the 1950s or in the earlier ages, even in the 18th century, there were very few women writers
so
because
true.
major reason is being, I feel personally, is because given the Indian context or even outside India, you would see that there were education was not there among the women. Women were like kind of second class citizens. They were not well educated. They were not given enough. I mean, they didn't know how to fend for themselves. So once in the since in the if you look at the history, you will find that it is in the then the Tagore family, they started writing, the female members of the Tagore family, they started writing small essays and all that. But it gave, when you're writing, when a feminine person is writing, what happens is whatever atrocities they are facing, they can express it, and they can give show it to, I mean, that will be read by thousands of other people, right? So they are propagating their thought processes to the masses. So if you see, as the time went, the number of female authors increased. So in the 1950s, if 9 out of 10 writers were only male authors, but come down to in 2000s, 2017, 18, or even slightly earlier, you'll find now that that number ratio has changed to 50%. 50% of the top best-selling authors, are female writers. And that is because I genuinely believe this, once the women were given good education and they started to express their thoughts, so what had happened is they started writing, and then the general masses became aware, and they found that what a female can actually do, and actually they can also write very well. And the other important thing is that as time went by, the financial independence of the females also grew. Their buying power increased. And once the buying power increases, we would like to buy our own stuff that we like to read. For example, female readers would like to read, no fiction, whereas the male audience generally, it was perceived. Actually, it is not true. It was perceived that the male audience generally like non-fiction. But what we find now is there is an overlap. We cannot actually say black and white classify. Okay, females only like romance, males only like thrillers or something like that. Now there's an overlap. You find that females like thrillers as well as the males. So that kind of overlap is there, and the buying capability of the feminine people are more, and so the publication houses are also catering to the needs of the female readers. So, and not only that, because I also personally feel that when I read a book by a female author, any well-written book is actually I really enjoy. But when particularly a female is writing on a topic, many of the issues that she faces, also I have faced, so I can relate, I can resonate, and I can really like it. I really like it, and it makes me more determined that if I have a child later on in my life, or if I have a female child, I'll ensure that she does not face the kind of stuff that other people in like 10 years or 15 years or even 20 years down the line used to face, right? So this is how I feel that women's literature also help other women. That is because they grow more aware. The female writers are also spreading a lot of awareness. For example, Rupangi is spreading a lot of awareness, like that if you're born a female, it doesn't mean that that's the end of the world. It actually means that you can grow and you can really do fantastically well if you're given a good opportunity to do that.
So true, so true. Rupani, I have a question to you. Writing on, I mean, it's general for everybody. It wouldn't necessarily be just women centric or men centric. It goes for every author. But yeah, since we are on a panel and we are talking on the topic, as a woman, did you have to face additional challenges or rejections as an author to get your manuscript being accepted or being taken seriously on a topic as this which you've written? And that is one. And the second part of my question would be, does your work really on such a sensitive and most essential topic written, does it end there once the book is written and published and out, or the actual work starts after that? So as a woman, What would you? What do you need to do additional if you want to put that out across?
Okay. So, Preeti, I think pertinent questions. When it comes to rejections, I think that's something all authors, and especially on this panel also, I'm sure all of us are used to. It's something which is par for the course, and part of our growth as well. So yes, of course, I've faced a lot of rejections, and I'm very proud of them as well. That it also in some ways shows that we've put our work out there, and it's kind of like a personal testament to the fact that we actually took that step forward and were able to put our work out there. So yes, rejections were part of it. I don't know whether like all of us have probably experienced. You don't typically get a lot of explanation as to why the work was rejected. So I'm not very sure whether it was specifically about that topic. But however, one thing which I generally notice is that one is, of course, strong female characters are something that we don't typically see. Rebellious in nature, like Prachi said about her character. All of us, I think, in some ways, have rebelled through our work, and it's important to see that kind of narrative and that kind of voice in literature. Maybe there is less of it. There is a paucity. I think now there's a huge push towards kind of covering that paucity. And there is a recognition in terms of even in film and web series, you're now seeing this whole new crop of stories and narratives which are available to women, and they're all centered around strong female characters. But one thing that I do want to see is men reading books that women have written. I think one is, yes, it's very cathartic for women to read about what we have gone through, but it's equally important, if not in some ways more important, for men to be part of these narratives as well. And Prachi, I think I really like that point. What you said, it's when you talk about feminism, it's not just one-sided. It's not just one side of the coin. It's really important to have an inclusive conversation when it comes to gender violence as well. That it's about both women and men, and toxic masculinity is part of the whole problem as well. And so, yeah, I think that rejections in terms of gender bias, even so, one thing which I noticed around these kinds of topics, which I was mentioning earlier as well, looking for books like this, looking for voices like these, is that maybe sometimes we do tend to kind of put in a plot which is around humor, or different kinds of things to sort of mellow the actual issue. I think there is one central kind of decision that the author has to make as to how to communicate these issues without it being too overwhelming. So there is definitely a little subtle text, kind of there, which authors have to take into account when it comes to sensitive issues, because of course not everybody has faced these things. However, you want to spread awareness, you want an engaging story, you want people to pick up your book. So I don't know, I think it's an interesting discussion to have. I don't know whether I'm not saying it's good or bad, but definitely something that I've noticed, that we try to because it's storytelling, we use things like and for me it's magical realism, but you use plot devices to kind of make it more enticing and make it more interesting, so that it becomes something that you can reach out to the masses with. And that's definitely something. And I don't know whether it's good or bad. I'd love to actually hear someone's viewpoint on whether, because I do feel it's interesting that sometimes we can't really come out and just say what it is in simple terms. It needs to be said a different way, and it's interesting. Yeah.
Prachi, what would be a quick, we are running out on time. We have just 5 minutes remaining, but would like to hear your views and opinions on this same question, which I bounced off to Rupangi and further on to her curiosity.
I would request you to please just repeat the question once.
Okay, so there is multiple things. So when a book is written, a concept is written, there are two things. Does it really end as an author there, or do you have to really project out a lot to see to it that the book is doing well in terms of selling and people are buying. Uh, it need not be gender biased for being a woman author, but yeah, let's accept the fact. People do look at it with an eye. Oh, this is a new kid on the block. Oh, this is a lady. These are the questions that run in the mind, whichever genre they're going for, be it fiction, non-fiction, thriller, non-thriller, whatever it is. So, have you? What are your takes on that, and what have been your experiences? And as an author, did you have being a woman author? Did you have to push through a lot to be accepted in terms of your writing, in terms of the content, being a woman?
Okay. So, yeah, of course, I did go, as far as rejections are concerned, when I started out around 5 years back, I did go through a lot of rejections. I still sometimes face rejections, and I think that's part and parcel of being an author. Another thing that I have, hello, yeah, another thing that I have faced quite frequently is that people ask me that why do you only write crime? Why are you so obsessed with it? Why don't you write romance, or why don't you write some other genre like fantasy? Look at J.K. Rowling; she's making so much money. Look at romance authors; they are making so much money. They are the ones, selling the largest. They have like sales when they have the largest pie of the market share. So I say that why are you writing crime as a woman? Sometimes it comes to my gender that women are considered soft, and I don't know. People think that we are more suited to historical fiction or romance or fantasy or something, and that crime and horror is not our are not our genres. But I say that first of all, it's not just that because of a woman I'm going to write romance. I cannot write romance at all. I try writing 100 words and I'm like, I want to kill myself because this is ridiculous. So and fantasy also I cannot write to save my life, although I love to read it. So the thing is that people should start taking women thriller authors and women horror authors more seriously, because we are taking over this space. We are writing this, and we are we are busting through that myth that something is a male bastion, because it is not. And yeah, so I face a lot of uh, I still, people ask me, why do you write crime, what's your obsession with it? I say, look, I write crime because I like it. Has nothing to do with my gender, has nothing to do with me being a sick person. I am not a sick person at all. I think I'm fairly decent. I write crime because I have my own reasons for that. So a woman should not be judged for writing such roles. So that's my take.
And did you face any challenges? Per se, more? Do you still face?
Uh, Not really. I mean, my challenges have been of a different type, but acceptance wise, I have been quite fortunate that people believed in my books and took it up.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Prachi. Thank you, everyone, for being on this panel. It has been a wonderful experience and interaction with everyone. I would love to continue with more time, but unfortunately, time is running out. And I would just like to add one thing: Vishwakarma Publications has really given us this opportunity to open our wings, spread our wings, and take on further on from there. Yes, one few seconds. You need to unmute your mic, Sarmishra. We have just a minute remaining with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karma, for giving me this opportunity for speaking. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for fulfilling my dream of becoming a published author. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for such an empowering session. We are sure that our listeners have gained very valuable insights from this. So, thank you, everyone, for joining. Um, Please join us for our next session, that is Love, Loss, and Longing at 2 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.